I'm diving straight into a debate that never seems to cool off, and I'm coming at it exactly the way I experience it in real life. I've shot both platforms. I respect both platforms, but when I reach into the safe for something I can rely on without turning it into a science project, I keep landing on the Mini-14. That's not a knock on the AR-15's popularity or its incredible aftermarket. It's just a recognition of how I actually use a rifle when the day gets busy, the weather turns, and the plan changes. The Mini-14 fits that rhythm. It's unpretentious, it's steady, and it does the job without demanding attention. A little context helps without getting stuck in dates. The AR-15 design took off in the late 1950s and rolled into military service in the early 1960s as the M16 shaping doctrine. The Mini-14 arrived in the early 1970s from Bill Ruger and Jim Sullivan, borrowing durable ideas from the Garand and the M14, but trimming them into a lighter, handier package. That heritage matters because it shows up in the way the rifle balances cycles and wears over time. I'm not giving a museum tour. I'm just saying this is a rifle with roots in a proven operating temperament, and you feel it as soon as you run the action and shoulder it. There's also the reality of how a rifle reads to other people. The Mini-14's silhouette looks familiar and almost rural, and that keeps ordinary moments ordinary when you're transporting it legally or walking into a public range to confirm your zero. A traditional profile avoids turning a routine errand into a spectacle. You slip it behind the truck seat, you roll down a dusty road, and nothing about its lines tries to steal the scene. But the reason I reach for any rifle is that it has to run. This is where the Mini-14's operating temperament earns its keep without my turning into a chalkboard. The Mini uses a short-stroke gas piston that does the heavy lifting up front and vents heat and fouling away from the bolt, while a typical AR-15 uses direct impingement that routes hot gas into the carrier to unlock and drive the action. That design is elegant and light, yet it also lays carbon exactly where tight tolerances live. When your day is dust, hay humidity, or a sudden shower, that difference stops being theoretical and starts being practical. I notice it most on long loops between pastures, when washboard roads powder everything and temperatures swing as clouds move. The Mini-14 keeps the same personality. It cycles with a shrug, and I don't have to baby it between strings. I'm not claiming it never needs maintenance. Any honest rifle needs care. I'm saying this one asks for less to keep its promise, which means more time on the trigger and less time rummaging for solvents when the light is already sliding off the ridge. American rifle history also left a memory that shapes how many of us think about carbon and reliability. Early M16 fielding blended powder changes with optimistic talk about being self-cleaning and not enough issued kits, and the result was stoppages nobody forgot. The modern AR world adapted, and today's rifles are vastly better than those first chapters. Even so, I like a system that starts forgiving and stays forgiving when conditions get messy. The Mini-14's piston doesn't ask me to outsmart the environment. It keeps going while I focus on the job at hand. None of this is a jab at the AR's capacity to be tuned into a sewing machine. That platform is brilliant at becoming exactly what you want if you enjoy tinkering and calibration. Swap a spring here, adjust a gas port there, change buffers, and you can chase a specific feel across different loads. The trade-off is time and attention that not everyone wants to spend on the way to a task. The Mini-14 aims at a different satisfaction. Out of the box, it behaves like the tool I already needed, not a project I need to build before I can even start. That's the foundation I wanted to lay before we move on to materials, ergonomics, and value. The Mini-14 carries quietly, cycles cleanly, and rewards focus on the job instead of on the rifle. When the day is busy and the weather is real, I want a partner, not a hobby, and this is the partner I keep reaching for. Now that the groundwork is set, I want to talk about what keeps the Mini-14 honest over seasons, not just afternoons. Durability isn't a slogan to me. It's the habit of a tool that truly behaves on a cold morning after a hot, dusty week. The first place you feel that habit is in the barrel. Cold hammer forging turns steel into a tube that tolerates heat and time without getting moody. I'm not chasing bench rest metals. I'm chasing predictability. When the barrel is warm, the wind is quartering, and you've got minutes of light. A barrel that keeps its personality when the day heats up is more useful than a spec sheet that only shines at noon. Steel choice matters too. The stainless versions aren't a magic shield against rust, but they buy forgiveness when weather and schedules pile up. A sudden squall, a salt breeze off the coast, or a damp case tossed into the truck shouldn't start a crisis. I've wiped a stainless Mini-14 after a long wet drive, and the chore felt unremarkable, which is exactly what I want. Maintenance should feel like brushing dust off my boots, not a rescue operation. Stainless keeps small sins small if you treat the rifle with baseline respect and don't mistake tolerance for invincibility. Reliability isn't just barrel and receiver. It's the entire loop of feeding, firing, and ejection. The least glamorous part of that loop is the magazine, and it decides whether your day stays calm. Factory magazines with the right geometry and spring tension remove drama from the equation. Tiny differences in feed angle or follower shape can create a rhythm you don't want. I've watched fine rifles stumble because a magazine lied about its dimensions, and I've watched those same rifles run like a metronome when the right magazine shows up. The Mini-14 rewards that simple discipline used the magazines designed for it, and the rifle keeps its promise. All of that sounds abstract until you picture a real day. I'm crossing a property line that looks sunburned and wind-scoured. The trail is a corrugated washboard, the cab rattles, and the air is talc. The rifle rides on a scabbard that collects dust like a magnet. I stop at a gate where wire has slouched into the posts, set the Mini on the hood, fix the mess, and pick it back up. Nothing about the heat shimmer or the airborne grit has changed what the rifle is prepared to do. The action runs with the same shrug, and the brass lands where it always does, making a small constellation on the ground next to the tire. Cleaning, when it finally happens, is ordinary. The gas piston layout piles fouling where it doesn't spoil the mood, and that turns maintenance into a routine, not a negotiation. A brush, a patch, a light film of oil in the right places, and the rifle is ready to sit quietly until the next errand. I'm not building a shrine to cleanliness. I'm denying carbon the chance to become a personality. That's the rhythm I want from a working rifle run, breathe, wipe, repeat. It makes the gun feel like part of the landscape instead of a project that constantly asks for attention. There's a psychological dividend to this predictability. When a tool refuses to surprise you, attention flows forward into terrain, wind gates, livestock, and timing. You stop narrating the rifle and start narrating the job, which is all I've ever asked of a carbine. The Mini-14 earns that shift by being boring in the best way. Boring means the stock doesn't creak. When the weather toggles, the action doesn't change its mind between magazines, and the point of impact doesn't wander for mysterious reasons. Boring is what keeps the day moving when you only meant to be outside for an hour and the chores multiply. I'm not selling a fairy tale. Metal Age's springs take a set, and everything man-made asks for attention eventually. The point I'm making is about trend lines, not miracles. Over a season of chores, the Mini-14 trends towards steadiness, and steadiness keeps small problems from stealing an afternoon. That's why I call it a workhorse with a memory. It remembers how it's supposed to behave even when the schedule frays, the sky turns, and the road shakes, bolts loose. Next, I'll move from materials and maintenance to the little touches that make the rifle easier to carry, store, and shoulder when the day calls for it. Ergonomics matter when a rifle isn't just something you shoot, but something you live with. The Mini-14 proves its worth the moment you stash it or move with it. Without a buffer tube at the rear like a typical AR-15 stock, choices are less boxed in, and the whole package carries like a compact carbine, not a frame demanding extra inches. No tutorial is needed. The design invites practical stocks, including folding options that make storage and transport easy without turning the rifle into a project. It keeps the silhouette tidy and the handling honest. That compact temperament pays off when space is tight and timing matters. Hopping out at a gate, or sliding across a bench seat, the Mini-14 shoulders with the calm personality you felt at first use. Its weight lives close to the hands, and the balance doesn't argue. If you fought a long stock in a cramped cab or tried to angle a protruding tube past a seatbelt, you know the value of a profile that minds its manners. It's not about spreadsheets. It's about how the rifle moves when gloves and a clock share your hands. That same practicality shows up the moment you shoot with iron sights. They're a quiet truth teller. With the front sight near the muzzle and the rear aperture at the back, the sight radius gives your eyes room to average out wobble from breathing hard or shooting from an awkward stance. You still have to do your part, press clean, follow through. But the geometry leans your way when light slides off the pasture and you're reading a flag of grass for wind. The picture looks steady, the post behaves, and rounds land where your map says they should. Value matters because most of us buy tools on budgets that coexist with fuel feed and everything else. A Mini-14 typically lives in the $1,000 neighborhood. That isn't spare change, but it buys a carbine that comes honestly from the factory, asks a little babysitting, and doesn't push you into a parts rabbit hole. With AR-15s, you can spend less or far more. Either way, the pull of upgrades can quietly turn a purchase into a hobby. The Mini-14 keeps a simple promise. Buy it, run it, keep it clean, and it returns the same personality next season. Accessories still have a place, just not a throne. A good sling, a dependable white light, maybe an optic match to your eyes and terrain, that's plenty. The rifle remains the main character, not the rails. Because the architecture isn't begging to be rebuilt every season, I focus on wind distance and time instead of chasing parts that promise 2% more. Minimalism isn't a rule, it's a relief that lets the work come first. The less I tinker, the more I notice the job, and the better the carbine serves its purpose. Pull the threads together, and the picture stays consistent. The Mini-14 carries without drama points, without fuss cycles, with that piston temperament that shrugs at grime and wears materials that forgive weather. It behaves like a coworker who shows up on time and doesn't make you rewrite the plan. That's the temperament I want in a rifle that rides in a truck and tackles real tasks. For how I live and shoot, the Mini-14 is the better partner, discreet to carry, predictable to run, and honest about what it is. That doesn't make the AR-15 a villain. It just means I know which tool I'll grab. If this resonates, add your experience, tap like, and subscribe to keep digging into rifles that earn their spot.